The first night Daniel Mercer came home from war, he slept on the living room floor with the lights on and a knife under his pillow, because silence was louder than gunfire and peace felt like a lie. The house was exactly as he had left it 2 years ago, except for the thin layer of dust on the windowpanes and the echo of a little boy's laughter that no longer lived there. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that change ordinary lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Daniel Mercer had survived roadside explosions, sleepless desert nights, and the guilt of watching friends fall beside him, but nothing had prepared him for walking into his own home and realizing he no longer recognized the man standing in the hallway mirror. 2 years earlier, Daniel had been a different person. He was a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a 4-year-old son named Oliver who insisted on wearing a red superhero cape to preschool. His wife, Emily, had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm, leaving Daniel to raise Oliver alone. The grief had been sharp but manageable because Oliver needed him. The little boy's sticky hands and bedtime stories anchored him to the world. When the call for deployment came, Daniel had told himself it was about duty, about providing for his son, about serving something bigger than his broken heart. He left Oliver in the care of his older sister, Margaret, promising he would come back stronger, braver, and whole. He did not expect war to carve pieces out of him that he would never get back. Margaret had done her best, but 6 months into Daniel's deployment, she was diagnosed with an aggressive illness. Hospital visits replaced playground afternoons. Oliver spent more time with neighbors than with family, especially with the woman next door to Daniel's house, a quiet elementary school teacher named Claire Thompson. Claire had been the one to notice Oliver sitting alone on the porch steps after Margaret's emergency surgery, clutching his red cape and staring at the road as if willing his father to appear. Claire brought him warm soup, read him stories, and eventually took him in when Margaret's condition worsened. Daniel learned all of this through brief, fragmented emails that arrived days late and ended too soon. Then came the message that shattered him in the middle of a sandstorm half a world away: Margaret had passed away. Oliver was temporarily placed in foster care while legal arrangements were being processed. Daniel had dropped to his knees in the dust, the sky turning orange around him, feeling smaller than he ever had in his life. He was a soldier trained to respond under fire, yet he was powerless to reach his own son. The war ended for him that day, even though he still had months left before returning home. When Daniel finally stepped back into his small suburban neighborhood in Cedar Ridge, the streets looked almost painfully normal. Lawns were trimmed. Children rode bicycles. The world had continued without him. He had already fought the legal battle from overseas, signing document after document to ensure Oliver would not disappear into a system that forgot faces. By the time he returned, custody had been restored to him. Claire Thompson had been listed as Oliver's temporary guardian during the transition. Daniel had memorized her name from paperwork but had never met her in person. The first time he saw Oliver again, the boy stood on the sidewalk holding Claire's hand. He had grown taller. His red cape was gone. Daniel had imagined this reunion 1,000 times, but reality struck differently. Oliver looked at him with cautious eyes, not running, not screaming "Daddy" the way Daniel had replayed in his head. Children adapt to survive, they build quiet walls when promises stretch too long. Daniel felt that truth like a blade. The nights that followed were worse than any battlefield. Daniel would wake up drenched in sweat, convinced he heard explosions. Sometimes he would shout without realizing it, and Oliver would cry from his bedroom. Guilt became a constant companion. Daniel tried to cook breakfast and burned the toast. He tried to help with homework but found himself staring at the same math problem for minutes. The simplest tasks felt like climbing mountains. He loved his son fiercely, but love alone did not quiet the war still raging inside him. Neighbors whispered politely. Some offered casseroles. Others offered stiff handshakes and awkward gratitude for his service. Daniel accepted it all with a numb smile. The only person who did not treat him like a fragile hero or a ticking time bomb was Claire Thompson. She would wave from her porch, her brown hair tied back loosely, her expression calm but observant. She never pushed. She never pitted. She simply existed, steady as a lighthouse. One evening, about 3 weeks after Daniel's return, he was sitting on his front steps while Oliver played silently with a toy truck. The sun was setting in streaks of amber and pink. Daniel's hands were shaking from a memory he could not shake off. Claire walked over slowly, carrying a small potted plant. She placed it beside him and said something that would change the course of his life. She told him that Oliver was afraid of losing him again, not because of war, but because Daniel seemed to disappear even when he was standing right there. It was not accusation. It was not judgment. It was truth, spoken gently. Daniel felt the words land heavier than any command he had received overseas. He looked at his son, who was pushing the toy truck back and forth without sound, lost in his own careful world. In that moment, Daniel realized he had been fighting ghosts while his son was fighting loneliness. That sentence broke something open inside him. For weeks he had been pretending that strength meant silence, that real men swallowed pain and moved forward. But Claire's words made him see that his silence was building a wall between him and the one person he could not afford to lose. That night, instead of sitting in the dark, Daniel knocked on Claire's door and asked how to find help. The journey that followed was not quick or easy. Therapy sessions forced Daniel to revisit memories he had buried under layers of denial. He joined a support group for veterans in nearby Brookfield, where he met men and women who carried similar invisible scars. At first, he barely spoke. But slowly, he learned that courage did not always look like charging into danger. Sometimes it looked like admitting you were not okay. At home, Daniel started small. He began reading to Oliver every night, even when his voice trembled. He attended a father-son camping weekend organized by the local community center, though the crackle of the campfire made his heart race. He practiced breathing techniques when panic crept in. There were setbacks. There were nights when he still slept on the floor. But there were also mornings when Oliver laughed again, a bright, ringing sound that filled the house like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Claire remained a quiet presence throughout it all. She would check in with a simple nod, occasionally inviting Oliver over for baking or art projects. Daniel found himself talking to her more often, first about practical things, then about memories, fears, and hopes. She listened in a way that made him feel seen rather than examined. Slowly, gratitude softened into friendship, and friendship into something warmer, though neither of them rushed it. Months passed. The house changed. The dust disappeared. The knife no longer slept under Daniel's pillow. One afternoon, Oliver found his old red superhero cape in a box and tied it around his father's shoulders instead, declaring that real heroes come home and stay. Daniel laughed, a full, unguarded laugh that surprised even him. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment right now to comment, "Hope lives here," and let us know that you're still watching. Your words might encourage someone else who feels alone. And if Daniel and Oliver's journey is moving you, please like and share this video so more people can believe that healing is possible. The true turning point came on a rainy Saturday when Daniel received a letter from one of the men he had served with. The letter spoke of another soldier who had not sought help and had lost his battle at home. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, the rain tapping steadily against the window, and felt a surge of determination. He would not let Oliver grow up visiting a grave marked by pride and silence. He would not let fear steal another piece of their life. He began volunteering at the Veterans Center, sharing his story openly. He told them about the night he slept on the floor with the lights on. He told them about the sentence his neighbor had spoken that cracked his armor. He watched as other men nodded, eyes wet, recognizing themselves in his words. Healing, he realized, multiplies when shared. A year after his return, the neighborhood held a small summer gathering. Children ran through sprinklers. Music drifted through the air. Daniel stood by the grill, flipping burgers, while Oliver raced across the lawn wearing his red cape once more. Claire stood beside Daniel, their shoulders brushing lightly. The sky was clear, vast, and peaceful. Daniel knew the scars would never fully vanish. There would always be certain sounds that made his pulse quicken, certain memories that visited uninvited. But he also knew he was no longer fighting alone, nor was he hiding behind silence. He was present. He was learning. He was rebuilding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Oliver ran up to him, breathless and smiling, and wrapped his arms around Daniel's waist. This time, there was no hesitation in the child's eyes. There was only trust. Before we reach the final moments of this story, here is a special request: comment the word "present" if you believe that showing up for the people we love is the bravest thing we can do. Daniel looked around at the neighbors, at Claire, at his son, and understood that the war had not defined his ending. A single sentence spoken with compassion had redirected his path. It had reminded him that survival was not the same as living, and that fatherhood required more than physical return. It required presence of heart. If this story moved you, If it reminded you of someone you love or a battle you're fighting quietly, please engage with this video. Like it, share it, and leave your thoughts below. Your interaction helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. Because sometimes, the most powerful change in a man's life does not come from a battlefield or a medal. It comes from a neighbor brave enough to speak the truth, and from a father brave enough to listen.